Good evening. You're joining the State of Business with me, Nishani Piguera. Let's first take a look at tonight's headlines. President addressing UN General Assembly says government is committed to the reconciliation process. And Chinese firms to revive loss-making mega projects in Hambantota. In tonight's headline story, President Maithripala Sirisena assured world leaders that the government is totally committed to the reconciliation process to establish lasting peace in the country. Addressing the 71st session of the UN General Assembly, he said the government would definitely prevent the occurrence of another war in Sri Lanka.
ජාතික සංහිඳියාව ශක්තිමත් කරමින් යුද්ධයක් නැවත අපේ රටේ මගේ රටේ ඇතිවීම වැළැක්වීම සඳහා සියලු පියවර මේ වන විට ගෙන තිබෙන බව ඉතාමත් සතුටින් පැහැදිලි කිරීමට පුළුවන්. මේදී මූලික වශයෙන් ජාතික සංහිඳියාව ශක්තිමත් කිරීමේදී ම්ලේච්ඡ ත්‍රස්තවාදීන්ගේ යුද්ධයකට වසර 30කට ආසන්න කාලයක් මුහුණ දුන් රටක් විදිහට ඒ තුල ලබාගත් අත්දැකීම් සමග නැවත කිසිදු අවස්ථාවක මගේ රටේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ යුද්ධයක් ඇතිවීම වැළැක්වීමත් රට තුල නිදහස හා ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදය තහවුරු කිරීමත් ජාතික සංහිඳියාව තුල ශක්තිමත් පදනමකින් ජාතීන් අතර සමගිය ඇති කරමින් ඉතා ප්‍රබුද්ධ රාජ්‍යයක් බවට පත් කිරීමත් මේ සඳහා මූලිකත්වය දීලා තිබෙනවා. ඒ සඳහා සෑම විටම ලෝකයේ සියලු රාජ්‍යයන්හි සහ අන්තර්ජාතික සංවිධානවල ආශිර්වාදය සහ සහයෝගය මා ගෞරවයෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says the government's plan is to develop Sri Lanka based on its strengths. The Prime Minister said the main strengths Sri Lanka possesses are the location and its people. He said this making the keynote address at the opening session of the second day's proceedings of the Colombo International Maritime Conference held in Colombo today.
We've taken over the landfill opposite the harbour, which was called the port city. It's going to be a financial city with its own separate jurisdiction, English laws being applied in its own tribunals, arbitration available for offshore activity. So we are providing the logistics hub with a financial hub for the Indian Ocean, filling in the vacuum between Singapore and Dubai.
The Prime Minister delivered his speech under the title Sri Lanka Maritime Industry Vision, Opportunities and Way Forward. The Prime Minister also disclosed steps to be taken to revive the loss-making Matala Airport and Hambantota Port.
We have agreed with the Chinese on the OBOR, One Belt, One Road initiative, both on the development of the harbour and the airport, and that both the harbour and the airport will be managed under a joint public-private partnership. The process of selection has already started. But we already approved an LNG plant and one refinery. I am told that there is a second refinery, a non-Chinese, that is also making an application to come to Hambantota.
The Financial Intelligence Unit of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka entered into a Memorandum of Understanding with the Suspicious Transaction Reporting Office of Singapore. It has signed on the basis of a reciprocity and in the spirit of cooperation and mutual interest, and within the framework of each authority's national legislation to facilitate the exchange of information related to investigations and prosecutions of money laundering and terrorist financing. This MOU has been entered into by the FIU Sri Lanka in terms of the provisions of the Financial Transactions Reporting Act No. 6 of 2006. The central bank said in a global coordination among financial intelligence authorities is essential to fight against money laundering and terrorist financing. In this regard, the FIU Sri Lanka has so far entered into MOUs with 32 jurisdictions, including the MOU signed with the STRO for sharing information for intelligence purposes. Time for a short break. Stay with us for more news on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching The State of Business. Dr. Parakrama Disanayake, Chairman and CEO of Aitken Spence Maritime and Freight Logistics, says Colombo Port has recorded double-digit growth this year. He disclosed this speaking at the South Asian Maritime and Logistics Forum held in Colombo yesterday.
Notwithstanding the crisis, the Port of Colombo has witnessed a double-digit growth this year. which is, I must say, which is phenomenal. Now, this growth primarily has been driven by the privately owned and managed CICT and SAGT. The state-owned JCT, which is owned and managed by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, which had a market share of 58% in 2013, has dropped to 34% in the first half of this year. Location, unfortunately, is only a comparative advantage. It doesn't mean that you have a competitive advantage.
The shipping sector expert said that India is developing 3 ports for their transshipment purposes. He added that only time will tell of their impact on the Colombo Port's transshipment business.
It is true that transshipment volumes of the port of Colombo, which is approximately 70%, is dominated by the Indian traffic. We are aware, Colombo is aware, that the former Prime Minister of India personally launched the port of Vallapadam in South India, but for various reasons, Vallapadam couldn't pose a threat to the port of Colombo. We are also aware that the construction of the Visinjam port as a transshipment port in Kerala by the largest Indian operator Adani commenced in December 2015. The Indian ambition doesn't stop there. NIM, as it has been described, is Delhi's big bet. That's how it has been described. Delhi's big bet on transshipment traffic. Now, the question is that can these 3 ports, let's face reality, take off the gloss of the port of Colombo? Time will tell.
Value-added tax and its implications will be the topic of today's Public Space Sri Lanka program, which will be aired tonight at 9 p.m. Tax consultant N.R. Gajendran, economist Indrajita Ponsu and consumer rights activist Ranjiv Vidnanage will be the panelists. And here's a look at some of the views from the program.
It's a quick fix, and VAT tax, VAT is, earlier turnover tax, it was a Tundu system, turnover means you have to see what is your turnover and pay. Yeah. So, but that has a cascading effect. It's easy to collect as long as you read the trader, and as long as you find out the trader's revenue, it's easy to collect. Income tax is more complex. In that sense, you can't avoid it because you are taxing profits.
If you look at the indirect taxes, the combination of indirect taxes options we have, value added is a better tax than the other taxes which are having cascading effects and all that. It's getting, the burden is getting more and more as you go down the ladder. So technically speaking, value added is a better guide. But the issue is not that. The issue is why the taxes are necessary in the first place, because the government expenditure. The government has commit to certain expenditures. Now these expenditures, some are essential expenditures, some are development expenditures, some are expenditures that are must, if for example infrastructure. Then there are expenditures which you just do as if that it's a credit card you're holding.
Stay with us for the Stock Watch after this break. Welcome back to the show. The market ended the day stronger with the indices closing higher and turnover reaching new heights on the back of foreign selling seen on National Development Bank, which resulted in a net foreign outflow for the day. Meanwhile, foreign buying was also seen on textured jersey and distilleries. Institutional and high net worth interest was present on Hemas Holdings, Citizens Development Bank and National Development Bank. The All Share Price Index gained 13.33 points to close at 6,465, while the S&P SL 20 gained 13.33 points to close at 3,579. Turnover was 2 billion rupees. Top traded counters were National Development Bank with 1.14 billion rupees, Textured Jersey with 187.4 million rupees, Hemas Holdings 128.4 million rupees, Citizens Development Bank 73 million rupees and distilleries with 72.6 million rupees. Retailers remained active on John Keel's Holdings Warren 23, while interest was also present on Ceylon Grain Elevators. Here's a look at the day's forex rates. And that's all the news we have for you today. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Have a pleasant evening.